Welcome to Module 2 of Communication Research Methods. In this module, we'll be talking about different concepts related to research design. There are a few chapters that we'll be covering in this module, and the first is in Chapter 1, the ethics section. So I've already read part of Chapter 1 for Module 1, and for Module 2, you'll be reading the ethics portion of this chapter. So there'll be a definition of ethics as it applies to research methods. We'll be discussing the role of the Institutional Research Board, the Institutional Review Board, the IRB, and this is the campus board that reviews all research proposals that involve human participants to make sure that the participants are being treated in an ethical manner. So part of this is looking at what constitutes ethical treatment of human participants, and there will be different aspects related to that, making sure that the participants know what they're being involved with for the research so that they're fully informed about what their participation includes. And then also an important aspect of treating human participants is protecting their privacy. And so we'll be discussing the difference between confidentiality and anonymity as it relates to participant privacy. Then in Chapter 5, we'll be discussing different forms of data that can be collected. So what could be the sources of data? That could be from interviews, from websites, from films, from survey instruments, so the different sources of data. And then when you're collecting data, you need to think about how you're going to sample that data. So we'll talk about random and non-random sampling techniques in the collection of data. Data collection settings, so where might you collect the data? So it could be an ethnographic study that involves observing participants in the natural environment, or it could be collecting data from social media, or doing interviews, or the different means of data collection and communication research. Then we'll be discussing levels of measurement, and this involves how the variables are operationalized or measured, and there are 4 different levels of measurement that we'll be discussing in Chapter 5 and in the learning module related to levels of measurement. And then finally in this chapter we'll talk about types of variables, and mainly we're discussing the independent versus the dependent variable here. Then Chapter 6 revolves around evaluating research, and so how would you evaluate interpretive research and determine whether or not it is a worthy topic, whether you're getting credible data, whether it's ethical, and whether the data that you're collecting is coherent across all the participants that you're observing. So we'll talk about ways to evaluate different types of research in Chapter 6. Then Chapter 7 involves hypotheses and research questions, and so both of these, research questions and hypotheses, help you narrow the focus. Research questions tend to be associated with qualitative and critical research, and research questions and hypotheses can be found in quantitative research. So whereas a research question is obviously a question grammatically, hypotheses are statements that look at the relationship or difference between 2 or more variables or ideas. And so we'll be looking at the difference between the null hypothesis and the research hypothesis in this chapter. One of the tasks associated with the course is completing a research proposal, and at the end of this module you'll be submitting portion A of the research proposal. Here you'll be deciding which of the theories from COM 306, and there are options listed in the syllabus that you can choose from, and you are limited to the ones that are listed in the syllabus. So take a look at that list and decide which of those theories you want to use. You'll be summarizing that theory using academic sources to summarize the theory, incorporating some recent articles that have tested that theory. And then I want you to describe 2 potential research topics that you could use to test this theory. So look at 2 good ideas that you might use in the next portions of the paper. And then lastly, I'd like you to think about 2 competing theories. So for example, if you're using social penetration theory, you might think about how expectancy violations theory could also potentially be used in your study. And then this portion of the paper should be 1 to 2 pages in length. Then the other tasks associated with Module 2 are to read Chapter 1, the ethics section, and then Chapters 5, 6, and 7, review the lessons and video material that you'll find in Blackboard, post the required comments to the voice thread for this module, complete quizzes 4 to 9, and remember you can repeat those quizzes as often as you like and your highest score counts towards your grade. Post to the module blog, and then lastly submit portion A of the research proposal. And I just want to mention one other thing about the research proposal is that this is only a proposal, so you will not be collecting data, doing interviews, sending out surveys or anything like that. So there'll be no involvement with any participants. You're just proposing a study that could be conducted. As always, if you have any questions, please get in touch with me.